Welcome to Experimarketing, the podcast where we innovate, create, and appreciate. Powered by Mostly Automotive Marketing with Matt Wilson. Here's the host of Experimarketing, Chief Experimarketer, Colin Carasquillo.
What's going on, Experimarketers? It is I, Colin Carasquillo, Chief Experimarketer here at Experimarketing, the podcast where we innovate, create, and appreciate new ways to generate opportunities for business in the automotive space and beyond. Without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Matt Wilson.
Hello.
Hi, Matt. How's it going?
Well, I got a new setup, Colin. I know you can't tell, but I can tell. And I've already identified a problem. My little control panel where I play your kick-ass music. Can I say kick-ass?
Yeah, beep, we'll kick beep.
Where I play your music is right near my mouse. And so now I got to push all these buttons at once, and I'm already discombobulated. So I apologize for any mistakes I make today.
No, that's okay. Listen, it's always good for a change of scenery. And for those, I guess, listening, it looks like Matt maybe rotated himself a whole 30 degrees. So instead of looking at his couch, you're now looking at his window. So we'll have to have us.
If I switch over, you can see my guitars.
Oh, and you can see his guitars. There you go. So we'll have to have a segment called "What's Happening Outside Matt's Window" at some point in time.
What are we talking about today? What are we
talking about today? That's a great question. Today we are talking about local advertising campaigns or hyper-local advertising. And today's guest is another podcaster, which I'm really, really happy. Anytime we get to have people that are very passionate about advertising and also have their own podcast. But this individual is also the co-founder of Reunion Marketing. He's going to walk us through hyper-local advertising, local campaigns in today's episode, which is called Going Loco for Local. Shame on me. Sorry about that. And that is not my episode title idea. That is Dane Saville's idea. Let's bring Dane Saville in. Dane is the co-founder and brand manager at Reunion Marketing, host of the KPI Cafe, and I guess, like we were saying, head dean or dean of Dealer University. Dane, how are you, man? Welcome.
I'm doing great. I guess I should put on like my sash or whatever, like little hat on the side.
That's it.
Thanks for having me on, guys. How you doing today?
Oh, sure. We're great, man. We're great. We're looking forward to another great episode of Experimarketing, and thank you for joining us on the show. You are an expert panel member on the Dealer Marketing panel, actually a new addition to the panel, which we're really, really happy to have you. But you wrote this great article, Going Local. I keep mixing it up. Going Loco for local campaigns. All right. And in that, you obviously talk about, everyone's favorite Google My Business, local campaigns, hyper-local advertising. So we'll get down to business and talk about that. But before we do, tell us what makes you, Dane.
God, do we have time for that? Is this,
yeah, sure.
On the couch, down, a little psychological. No, we came from Reunion. There were 6 co-founders. We came from a 33-store automotive group in Raleigh, North Carolina before we left, and then we're united. So that's why it's Reunion. The 6 of us came back together. I left for a different advertising agency outside of automotive, worked there for a few years, and we reunited to create Reunion. And I'm the song and dance guy for Reunion because I also have been a professional wrestler for 16 years.
So I'm
used to being the goon and doing the big song and dance. So that's how I am who I am.
He's a showman.
That's incredible. I had no idea. And I usually do my research or like to think I do my research on our guests. But can you just tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's bad. You might be the only person I've ever met, like actual real person, not on television or whatever, that's professionally wrestled. So tell us about that.
I was a fan as a kid. And then I was like 20. We went to a local show and I loved it. And I said, how do I do this? And I got trained, and I've had the pleasure to tour Japan, part of the UK, across the US, been on Monday Night Raw a few times. I'm on record as having Mick Foley's very last professional wrestling match. So.
Wow. That is crazy. A really fun fact.
Yeah, I've been with Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, Jim the Emma Neidhart, Greg Valentine, Hurricane Shane Helms, list goes on.
That's really cool. That was my Ric Flair impression, if you guys couldn't tell.
I
But
picked up
anyway,
on it.
thank you. Let's do it though. Let's I guess add a little Ric Flair spice into the article that you wrote here. So going loco for local campaigns, tell us, I mean, really, and we're kind of going off script. One of the first things I'm like, hey, we don't go off script, but we are kind of going off script here. But so local campaigns. I mean, why has that become so important? Let's talk about kind of hyperlocal advertising in the midst of COVID. Even before then, I mean, I guess with the evolution of Google and Google My Business, just as an expert, tell us about that and what kind of that is.
Yeah, as you guys very well know, I mean, a study came out last year, 63% of all searches had no click. The importance and the weight that Google's putting behind Google My Business, behind the optimizations. You guys probably saw the test they were doing. So like aggregating local inventory, like a cars.com or, like third-party site, cars for sale on GMB. There's just that profound importance that is being placed on Google My Business listings. And, even with our dealer partners, we're looking at it and there's exponentially more people viewing the listings than going to the website. A great number of directions requests, phone calls across the different listings that we recommend our partners have, as breaking them out into different operations, service, sales, parts, if they have a big buyback center that they're pushing, rental cars, if they do rentals. And we're just seeing, just this explosion of engagement with Google My Business. So local ads is another layer of taking advantage of this exposure and this web property and visibility, in which, there are these placements in YouTube and the standard placements, but then also on your on GMB profiles and then on Google Maps as well. So we're all these people where you have this major visibility, you're now able to place different advertisements that are going to be delivered. That's the purpose of advertising, right? That's advertising 101, is put your message where people are consuming, right? And so what better place than a spot where there's massive amounts of eyes looking at information.
Right. Yeah. No. So you had mentioned, the rise in zero-click searches, which I think, to me on the dealer side of things, yet in a marketing position, is so fascinating because it is really showing the importance of a GMB, Google My Business, making sure that is properly optimized, as you had mentioned, with all the different departments that you could do. So sales, service, parts. But I love the new addition, which you had added in there. And I think, ultimately in this day in the current market where new inventory is at an all-time low for a lot of dealers, and used inventory, also is tough to come by. Auction prices are very high. We're seeing that there are good grosses on vehicles, that's a positive, but we need that constant flow of inventory to sell. So I love that you had mentioned, and that's why I'm highlighting it again, but buyback centers and or anything for, like maybe a buying center. So yes, your buyback center. I think that's super important, or incorporating value, your trade, sell your vehicles, things like that in Google My Business. But then also looking into the near me searches, right? So we've also seen the rise in dealer near me or whatever that might be. And ultimately Google is populating a business's Google My Business in those cases. And that's going to be one of the main things that a person sees to start. Ultimately, the benefits of hyper-local and making sure that's part of your strategy, does a lot of it just come down to, increased visibility, but with increased visibility, you're going to get increased engagement?
Yeah, and the great thing about these local ads too is it also not only do you protect your backyard, but you can appear on competitors' GMBs as well. So there's even the visibility of let's say for whatever reason, if you're not showing up in a local 3-pack, that ad, if you're still getting into the game of GMB, running these ads concurrently can also help fill that gap while you're still in the midst of optimization. If you're sort of behind on doing all that, so. The ads that little bit of, it's sort of like, PPC, like you use PPC to kind of fill some gaps on SEO. And there's other strategies behind it too, right? But that's sort of also, a play with GMB itself, making sure you have the optimization. So if you're not ranking for keywords in the SERPs, you can still actually have your GMB populate in the local 3-pack. And now these ads, another layer on helping fill gaps while you are optimizing. And again, it, even not on your GMB necessarily, you can still have your brand awareness present there, through other non-branded category searches.
Yeah, I think, ultimately what we see is as the space continues to evolve, right? We had a previous episode with Brent Albrecht from Friendemic, and we were talking about reviews for Google My Business at the time. But obviously, Google My Business has become this main focal point for a lot of dealers, a lot of vendor partners like yourselves, for dealers. And it's one of those things that we see as it's almost like the new side door, your new digital side door to your dealership, your business, right? Because you have your brick and mortar dealership, you have your website, which is your virtual showroom, right? Open 24/7. But now you have your Google My Business, which is that virtual side door. I mean, literally, it's on the side of a screen. If you're looking at desktop, it is, kind of stacked if you're on mobile. But just showing the importance of having that and making sure that all facets are optimized, and even on the maps. I think that's the key thing. And when you talked about local ads, why that was super important that I wanted to speak with you is because I don't think dealers, and myself included, I never thought, hey, let's do something to ensure that we're always showing up on Google Maps, aside from having the Google My Business and then trusting that Google My Business will always be visible because, it's Google and it's your Google My Business. So that's really incredible. I mean, when did you guys at Reunion start really looking into this? And I mean, I know you have some results on here, and not to read them verbatim, but I'll even let you get into that because you're the expert. So, I mean, just talk to us about kind of when that started, the why, essentially, unless it matches up with kind of what I just explained with, hey, there's been more relevance put on Google My Business, and then some of the results that you guys are seeing.
Yeah, I think, and this is a little bit of guesswork because I'm not sure exactly when our director of paid search started looking into it, but I know I started having conversations with people November 2020, and then really started pushing it beginning in January of this year. So I mean, it's been a conversation we've been having for a while now. The reason why I wrote the blog that I did is because, one, it's pretty easy for setup, right? There's actually not a lot of work. And even if you are missing some assets, it's, a GMB linked to your Google ads,
that's right.
one YouTube video, and then some images. But those images can actually be pulled from, I believe, like OEM sites, can be pulled from your website, can be pulled from your Facebook. So, it can leverage other assets. So it's not exactly like a really difficult thing to do. And then the optimization is just you're optimizing the ad content, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to see if there's other videos you could leverage that might resonate more. You're playing with the images, so it's not really that difficult. And yet, because of the visibility of Google My Business and just the numbers of people engaging, and when you get down to those non-branded category searches that sort of populate that local 3-pack, people Google knows who's really showing interest in buying a vehicle, right? Like they don't tell us everything naturally, but they know, based on someone's search behaviors, what's going on. So they know when to deliver the right ad. You got to trust the automations in there that they're building. I mean, and we're seeing, 50 cent to $1.50 cost per click, $4 to $6 cost per conversion. We're seeing 10 to 30,000 interactions. And it's not, we're seeing stuff like that with, budget. I think the minimum that Jessica D, our director of pages, recommends is $300 up to $1,000. So it's not like you're, investing $10,000, $20,000. It's minimal work, and it's, a modest investment for a pretty good return.
I think that's a lot of things that dealers like. I mean, ultimately something that's not too high maintenance, right? And not that it's set it and forget it, because that's a trap that we have to obviously move away from as dealers. But, one of the things that we do like, obviously, is something that's not too hard to set up or maintain. And obviously then the price has to be right. So that's pretty incredible, though. So, I mean, for something as low as $300 and then up to $1,000, I mean, yes, there are definitely other vendor partners or third-party providers or whatever it may be, where dealers are spending some hard-earned money and then probably not getting the return that you may get when you implement something like a local ad campaign. So I think that's phenomenal. I mean, ultimately, that's the reason why on Experimarketing I wanted to talk with you. we know you're a fellow Experimarketer, and you guys trying something out like this where it really is super relevant now, where people are conducting those searches. The data is out there. It gives dealers another avenue to get in front of these people. We know omni-channel is as important as ever. So yes, to be hitting them on all facets, right? So social, paid search, making sure you have your good SEO strategy in place, your remarketing and retargeting, and then of course, anything related to Google My Business when a person, searches for you and shows up. So you talked about the verified GMB link. That's what you need to your Google ads. YouTube, right? YouTube video that needs to be running, and then any images, but the images themselves can be either pulled, so we think from the OEM or your dealership website, or even uploaded from customers, I would assume. How would a business start doing these things? Not that there's dealers out there that I don't think have a verified Google My Business, but I think one of the things that we want to convey here, Dane, and I know you're a teacher as well, right? You have Dealer University. For dealers out there, can you give them the steps? Let's say they just do a search for their dealership to claim their Google My Business. Can you kind of walk us through how they would do that and then kind of doing those things?
So in terms of well,
I think, just to start, to reiterate or just to clarify, let's say, for example, here, Nielsen Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, I do a search on Google. I see the Nielsen Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Google My Business populates, right? And this is real life example, but then I might not have ownership of that. And no one in our organization has ownership of it. So it's kind of all right, obviously to do local ads, I want ownership of my Google My Business. So is that something that you can kind of walk us through on how to do the ownership side and then make sure that we can hook ourselves up to do these other advertising components?
Yeah, so the claiming of,
yes, correct.
It's like a verification process. Whenever you search for your Google My Business, you want to sign into your Google account. And then there's the to claim your business. So on your computer, you have a Google Maps open, enter the business name. You want to choose, of course, choose your business, right?
That's important, dealers. Choose your business.
Right. And then, there's going to be verification options. So It depends on how how you want to verify through the option that they give you whenever you click claim this business,
right,
manage, and then there's verifications that you can follow the on-screen steps. To be honest with you, it's been so long since I even went through this process that I couldn't even tell you what options popular. I'm not going to lie to you, so I'm not going to.
That's okay.
I'm not going to feed you BS. I don't remember the last time I claimed one, but
that's why we're here, Dane. So Matt, if you want to interject, I know there's phone calls, and then there's still the postcard method.
I know the postcard is there. Okay, yeah. I remember the postcard aspect, but I don't remember the other options. So.
It's okay.
The postcard is still popular. I just used that for a client that we were claiming their service and parts listings, and they did the old postcard. You could do the phone number, although that's always tough with the dealer because we all have phone trees usually.
Correct.
And then I believe that if you have an email address with the domain name of the business, there might be a way to start the process there. If you're an agency like where I work, we can't do that because we don't. Our email addresses are not at the deal. Nielsen Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.net /website, whatever your websites are there. But the process is, I think those are the three ways that you can do it. But it never ceases to amaze me the number of dealerships that have their Google My Business page that is owned by either an agency they fired or an employee who doesn't work there anymore, right? Colin, that's got to happen at stores when you guys acquire stores.
Listen, we just acquired our new Nissan location, and that was one of those instances where it was still owned by, the previous group that owned that specific dealership. A lot of the individuals did not remain employed with us at that point in time. And then it was my responsibility to basically hunt down whoever I could to ensure that we could get ownership of the Google My Business, which, we ultimately did. But Dane, not to put you on the spot, but the reason why I think that that's very important to discuss is just like Matt said. I think there's a lot of dealers out there, whether they have agency partners or whether they have someone in-house, as a digital marketing manager or someone monitoring their presence. In some instances, that very, very crucial thing about having your Google My Business owned, verified, and updated might not be done. I mean, I'll tell you, there are some instances, especially coming out of COVID now, where dealers went and shut down their pages to show that they were closed, and they still haven't updated their pages that are saying, hey, we're back open. And now they're kind of wondering, well, if people aren't showing up, like what's going on? Oh, maybe it's because on your Google My Business, one of the first things the customer's seeing, it still says that you're closed. So I think that that's just really important for dealers. Conduct a self-audit. Go on Google, type in your dealership, ensure that you have ownership of that Google My Business profile. And to all the GMs, dealer principals, marketers listening out there, definitely, make sure that that's being happened. Ask the right questions. Here's another thing, not related to Google My Business, but just because we're now on that kind of map pack, if you will. I think one of the biggest things I learned this the hard way, is that I have an iPhone, right? And essentially, if you go on here, your standard maps is Apple Maps. Apple Maps is actually powered by Bing, your Microsoft, and pulls in your Yelp reviews. So here's something for you guys, dealers for out there, just a helpful tip. Just because you have your Google My Business updated, verified, whatever, it doesn't stop there, guys. You need to make sure that everything, your Apple Maps, all of that is also updated, because there are still people, I know, hard to believe, that still use just the default settings and whatever it is on their mobile devices. And we know the shopper is inherently mobile now. So that's something where, hey, like I said, conduct that audit, ensure that your local map packs, that's why we're talking local campaigns, everything's optimized to build upon, right? I mean, Dane, would you agree? I mean, in theory, it's like, hey, make sure you have a good foundation before you can build, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, it goes back to the crux of you want to be where consumers are, and where consumers are engaging. You want to have a presence there. And another thing too is thinking about like directories and local SEO.
Yes.
A tip is, consistency, and typically like with citations, like if on your website, street is ST, across your directories have ST as street. So consistent, it's like nuances. It's little small things that can make a difference. So you want to have consistency is a big part of that. So across all your citations, you keep them consistent. It's interesting you brought up Yelp, because they actually just updated some targeting options. So now it used to be just a radius targeting with Yelp for ads. Now you can choose choose geos to target, and now they have an option. I can't remember. It's Yelp something. Can't remember the name. Yelp Connect, where you can now also deliver content to consumers who have looked at similar businesses or conducted category searches related to your business.
See, that's interesting. And, it's one of those things where also Experimarketing, we challenge dealers to try new things. Obviously, do it within reason, do it with data to back up your decisions. You have to do something that makes sense. But, nothing against Yelp, but I know it's always been a love-hate relationship between dealers and Yelp because of the reviews. And if you didn't pay to play, essentially, you couldn't respond to any bad reviews. And now Yelp might have fallen by the wayside in recent times. But I think this is an interesting play now that you bring this up, where, hey, here's another avenue, or as we like to say, the white space that dealers can potentially look at to try to get more people to their business, especially as the space becomes more competitive. So that's very interesting. And I always love that about what you produce, Dane, and your podcast. And then of course in your LinkedIn posts, because you always have like snippets of information that I end up finding myself saying like, oh, how did I not know that? I'll go to Dane though, and Dane will have all the good information. So that's very cool that you share that about Yelp. So now if we come full circle though, we're talking about, all right, you make sure that you have a good foundation. So your Google My Business, your Apple Maps, Yelp, your local listings and directories and things like that. Now, let's say, dealer, you're ready to start doing some sort of local ad campaigns. We talked about why those are important. We talked about what type of content essentially gets put out on those. I guess I would like to say, from here, what does the future of local advertising look like? Does it get more important as we move on? Does it kind of fall by the wayside? You mentioned in the article that it's been around for some time. It's just finally getting the recognition that it deserves. So, I mean, kind of walk us through, talk us and walk us through that?
I don't want to prognosticate too much, but
whoa, what is that? My
if you-
girlfriend says I use big words, but holy shit, what is prognosticate?
I don't, I don't want to like overstep and over hypothesize here, but
Okay,
if you look at like iOS 14.5 update and what that's doing, if you think about Facebook doing the on Facebook AIAs,
sure.
you think about Google with cars for sale on GMB, you think about the test they did quietly with aggregating inventory. Platforms are like creating their own sort of ecosystem to keep you within their platform and to justify why you need to continue to invest. And I think local SEO, especially as you think about 63% no clicks, especially as you think about the sort of streamlined, frictionless experience consumers want. I'm going to guess that Google might have at the Google Marketing Live on the 27th, I think they might say something about this whole inventory beta test. I have a gut feeling about this. Data beats intuition, but sometimes intuition is pretty close to the mark. But I could be wrong. But I think local SEO is going to become more and more important as Google works towards keeping people on Google properties.
Sure.
Facebook keeps working towards keeping people on Facebook properties. And you're going to have these sort of, I don't want to say like they're going to be siloed because there's still going to be synergy, but you're going to have to look at things, I think, almost analyzing and looking at data within those platforms themselves. So I think Google's going to double down on keeping you on Google. And I think that's going to continue to be with products and innovations. And I guarantee, soon enough, if they move forward with that sort of cars.com aggregate of inventory, it's going to become a pay to play at some point too.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want to monetize that somehow.
Right.
But yeah, I think, not to meander too much, I think that I think local SEO is going to become more and more important as more people expect easier access to information and products and services.
Absolutely. So, a mutual connection of ours, and actually all of us, I believe we've spoken with him at some point in time, but Bob Lanham, head of automotive retail at Facebook, we've had conversations in the past where, just like you said, these things become more siloed. What he calls them and what we end up calling them is walled gardens. So essentially, each one of these businesses is going to be its own walled garden where, yes, you're going to have a handle on that specific, what's happening in that walled garden, what kind of party's going on over there, like what's going on in the next garden, like what party's going on over there. But, Dane, as someone, co-founder Reunion Marketing Agency, for someone on the dealership side of things, because I think we can learn a lot from someone on the agency side of things, is that something that we should be afraid of, or is that something that we should resist? Or ultimately, we should adopt that. We should understand what's kind of happening and make our operations more efficient based upon those changes, correct? What would your guidance kind of be as an expert panel on the dealer marketing panel, as well as someone on the agency side of things? For dealers, what can you tell us? Give us some solace.
There's a difference between sort of chasing shiny objects and going where the path is leading you. And change is uncomfortable. I think these changes we just all need to embrace. I think, think about just the announcement with Facebook Marketplace removing.
Let's ask you about that too. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. So, it's tasking us with being more strategic in how we approach things. Right. I know I've seen dealers on LinkedIn, different platforms posting about how they're going to be strategic about specialty vehicles or vehicles under 15,000 that they'll be strategic in what they're going to manually place on Marketplace. And the thing is, Facebook, they're pushing the AIAs, the VDP like page populates in like a half a second compared to 6 seconds average on a dealer site. Right. So you're just going to, I think it's just, you just kind of have to, my advice to dealers is embrace the new landscape and make sure, like you said, Colin, earlier, about asking the right questions.
Sure.
Be informed, engaged, listen to Experimarketing podcasts, listen to other
listen
podcasts.
To the KPI Cafe, guys. Come on.
You have to step up your game. I don't expect I didn't remember beyond the postcard what else was the verification process. I'm not a master of all trades. No one's a master of all trades. Right. But it's a matter of at least maintaining a level of information that you can then hold your vendor partner, your internal team more accountable. So my thing to dealers would be understand what's going on, understand how the landscape is changing, and and be informed and ask the right questions. I don't know if that really answered your question, but
no, it does. It does. That's really great, Dan, because I think what happens is, and listen, you and I and Matt, we're all in the same Facebook Automotive Marketing Collective. So I'll plug that too. Really great outlet for individuals in the automotive space, both where vendors and people on the dealership side of things come together and share insights, answer questions. I mean, talk about a really great community and utilization of a Facebook group. But one of the things that Dane had mentioned, and we touched on it, but the announcement that Facebook had made where they're going to stop allowing third-party providers, inventory providers, to upload inventory automatically to the Facebook marketplace. And I mean, I think that post probably got hit with some of the most like, what the F is going on here kind of things, like that's going to be such a big headache for dealers. And it kind of sat for a little bit. They let it marinate. And then next thing you know, you have other people who I would say are forward thinkers and kind of thought leaders in the space coming forward and saying, well, no, this is an opportunity. Instead of just having something be set it and forget it where it's uploaded and, it comes and goes, it is really going to take a diligent dealer to ensure that the inventory is uploaded and pulled down as it sells. And there could be different strategies behind it, as you mentioned. Or you end up using the AIA, ads, the dynamic inventory ads. And essentially that's where you're going to go. You're going to have to spend some money to essentially be involved in that space. But guess what? That's where your customer is, and as you said, that's where the path is leading. So you have to take the path, stop fighting it, stop trying to run in the opposite direction. But it did answer my question, Dane. And I think you're right. It all, once again, comes down to asking the right questions, being aware of the changes, seeing the positive out of those changes, right? And then understanding how your operations can be adapted to ultimately fit into that puzzle piece, that ever-changing puzzle piece.
And the last thing, I guess, the last tip I would say too, and this is of course a struggle for everyone in retail automotive, is digital marketing. It behaves outside of the 30-day cycle, and that's tough. That's tough to accept in some cases. I mean, SEO and good digital marketing is not a light switch, right? I try to always say it's more like a solar panel field, right? It takes time to build the panels, to get them out there. And just because the sun isn't shining doesn't mean it's not doing its job, right? Like we can push back on, we have no inventory right now, but why wouldn't you still want to build the content for when you do get the inventory, you are ranking for those products and services that you offer. So, it's so often that people just go, well, I can't, there's not the immediacy, so I don't need this. But it's not about the immediacy. It's a long-term game. It's building that solar field to soak up the sun and power your digital presence.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great analogy. And I think that's something that a lot of dealers, even a lot of marketers, lose sight of. It's because the industry that we're in is very now, right? I mean, wow. Oh my goodness. Dealers complain about millennials because they're all about immediate gratification. And it's almost like dealers are like millennials. They want immediate gratification. So, with that, I think it's very important, as you had mentioned, although we might have some hardships now with inventory, although, we could say, oh my goodness, the chip shortage and inventory shortage is going to last into next year. Yes, prepare for when you do have inventory back. Prepare for the people that are still coming to your dealership and visiting your dealership web properties, because we see that there's still traffic. Sales are great, right? A lot of dealers out there experiencing some of the best months they've ever had with no inventory. And so obviously something has to be happening. And yes, I would agree with you, Dane. A lot of it comes down to just being there, being prepared for when that customer does find your dealership, comes in. And a lot of that does start going back to exactly what you wrote about here, which is making sure that you're locked in on your hyper-local market, your backyard, and then you will have success. You say here, Dane, that ultimately you want people to start winning, my friends, right? You want people to start winning with local campaigns. So with that, Where can people reach you specifically or Reunion? Matt can type this in real quick. So I don't know if you want to give out your direct contact information, and don't feel pressured. You don't have to. But so was it reunionmarketing.com if they want to learn some more information?
Reunionmarketing.com. If people want to reach out to me directly, I have no problem giving away my personal information. Dane, D-A-N-E, at reunionmarketing.com, or call or text me at 919-413-1975. So
you might have to say it one more time. Matt's typing really quickly, but that's okay. So
I got 9-1 something.
919-413-1975.
There you go.
Say what we all should say in our commercials. Just Google him. You'll find him.
Basically. And go listen to the KPI Cafe podcast. Now, originally you guys had it was video, but you just went back to audio, correct?
Yeah, it was a matter of accessibility. I think people have, when they're jogging, walking, driving, they're, especially driving and walking and running, you can't really watch a video, or you shouldn't. I wouldn't recommend that for your health. So, it was, we were getting good engagement. But it was like, I was having fun. It was more for me. Like I was just doing goofy shit that made me laugh. And so I was like, we were keeping them under 10 minutes so they can be natively posted on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I was like, you can have more comprehensive conversations on longer form. So I decided to make that a KPI, like a long form audio podcast. And I pull out what I call quick clips. It's like, 3 to 10 minutes of a video. So that way then there's the video asset of it. But yeah, so I just decided to change it to longer format to have better conversations with people.
That's awesome, man. Now, and obviously, Matt and I being in the space, we completely get it. We completely appreciate what you're doing with KPI Cafe. The guests you have on, incredible guests. So really keep up the good work, obviously with Reunion, with KPI Cafe, with Dealer U. I mean, everyone, these are tremendous. Oh, you have professional wrestler on there. All these different titles. But yeah, Dane, no, really someone that I always look forward to when I see your posts on LinkedIn and obviously listening to the podcast and things like that. Learned about your professional wrestling career, though. That's incredible. So thank you so very much for joining us today. Hopefully for everyone listening out there, you got a little insight into the importance of a local campaign, and you start going loco for local. Thank you very much, Dane. We'll see you next time. All right.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Dane.
Man, Matt, I mean, there's a lot for dealers to cover, to look at, to make sure that their bases are all covered. But dealers, don't be alarmed. It's okay. We will get through this with vendor partners like Dane, with vendor partners like Matt. You too can have ownership of everything in your Google My Business, your Apple Maps, your Yelps, your all this stuff. Don't be intimidated. Make a list. Tackle it one by one. What do you think, Matt?
I think the thing is with Google and Facebook too, but probably mostly Google, is that it changes so much, right? So their policies and what they expect and their procedures and the way they do things changes so fast that you need a vendor partner that can keep up with that, because it's impossible to keep up with it on your own, right? So that's why you need a Reunion Marketing or a Silverback Advertising or whoever you're dealing with. I'm wearing the shirt today. Whoever you're dealing with out there, because you can't keep up with it.
Right.
And you've got to work with somebody who can ingest all that information, because it's always changing.
Ask the questions. I think that's the biggest thing. And let's just say it again, because it's super important, whether it's on a monthly basis or however often you as a dealer speak to your vendor partners. Hopefully it's a little more than a monthly basis, but, ask those questions. What kind of updates should I know about when it comes to social media? What kind of updates should I know about when it comes to Google? I mean, now we're talking about navigating this cookieless world.
Yeah,
I think dealers probably hear that and they go, what do you mean? All the Keebler Elves cookies are gone? Like there's no more cookies?
Those are my favorite.
I mean, it's not about that at all. It's about how are you going to track your customer when they come to your website or go to different web properties? How are you going to start advertising to these people and not lose a step in your marketing? So ultimately, it's about asking the right questions. It's about right now focusing on the local impact that you can have or make with your Google My Business, your listings, right? Make sure your directories and all those things are optimized correctly and that there's consistency across the board. I think what we see, or what we saw with COVID and what we will continue to see as we move forward, is that there was this massive shift with advertising spend, right? Matt, you recall this. A lot of people turned off their search marketing, SEM, their cost per click or PPC, pay per click. They turned off their SEM. They ended up moving money into social media because people were sitting on their phones, their couches, on social a lot. They moved money or spent more money in SEO to maintain that value of just straight organic searches. And then some had some retargeting capabilities in case where once those people came to the site, they were being retargeted. But a lot of the big expenditure, guys, was in your SEM. You turned it off. You still had traffic to the sites. You still sold cars. But that just goes to show you the importance of local.
Yes.
Stop
clapping.
That. Stop clapping. I need to make a point.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So everyone go Loco for local. Go check the article out on dealermarketing.com, which they sponsor our lovely podcast. Yes. And then, of course, as always, follow Matt and I. Come find us. Go on LinkedIn. Go on YouTube. Go on Facebook. You can like and follow our pages there with our respective podcast titles. And we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear from fellow Experimarketers. We want to talk. We love talking. I love talking.
To chat.
Love to chat. All right. That's it for today's episode. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks once again to Dane Saville at Reunion Marketing. Kick-ass job. Thank you.